inshallah.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Muhammad wa ahli baytihi tayyibin tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum. So we left off talking about Nabi Sulayman alayhi salam, that he was given a ring that was inscribed with the words, "Glory be to the one whose words the jinn were muzzled." So we were talking about that is the sunnah of prophets to wear the ring, mostly the akik stone or any ring that is worn on the right hand. This is alamat Shia, from one of the five alama or the five signs of being Shia from Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam. So one of them is wearing ring on the right hand. And we have different type of stones: aqiq, dur najaf, feroza, yakut. The list goes on and on. We have many different type of stone, and sometimes we have engravings on the stone or on the ring itself. And this is one of the things that we saw that Nabi Sulayman had. So he says, Suleiman decided to devote his mighty kingdom and miraculous powers to overpower the disbelieving kings, not to live in luxury. In capacity of a king, he carried himself with dignity and composure. However, beneath his regal garments, he wore coarse clothing made of goat hair and a fiber made of palm fronds, which he wove together himself. He would serve his guests meat with fine white bread, but he would provide his own family lower grade whole wheat bread. He himself would eat coarse barley bread, and whenever possible, he would have his meals with the poor and avoid the company of the wealthy, saying, "I am a poor man among many poor people." While other kings and even his own subjects slept soundly, he would spend the night in worship, weeping until dawn. Most of the time we see that the rich people become out of touch with the poor people. They don't understand how they feel. They don't know the suffering that they endure. But if one does like this, Suleiman was doing, wearing coarse clothing, eating lower grade food than what was be expected of a king. And we saw that this was the same way of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, that he wanted to be in touch with the poorest of the poor subjects and not to overlook them or forget about them. He said most of the people mistakenly saw his kingdom and wealth as a luxury to be envied. One farmer gazed upon Suleiman's entourage as it passed in the distance. He muttered to himself some words of amazement and envy. The wind conveyed his words to Suleiman, who stopped the caravan. He walked over to the farmer and he said, "I have walked over to you to warn you not to wish for what you do not have the strength to bear." A single word of praise to Allah uttered with sincerity is better than all the wealth and power that lies in the hands of the house of Dawood, because the reward for that praise will be in eternity, while the kingdom of Suleiman will eventually perish. A lot of time we will wish for something, but when we get that thing, it is too much for that person to bear. For example, someone wants to have a bunch of wealth, but when they get the wealth, what do? They disobey Allah, or they forget their wajibat, they forget their prayers, and so on and so forth. That Suleiman says, all this that you see, it will go away one day. But that thing that you do sincerely for Allah, it will stay. It will give you eternal blessings. He continued, "We have been given whatever people have been given in addition to things they have not been given. We know what people know in addition to what they do not know. Considering this, we have found nothing to be better than the following: to fear Allah, though He is unseen, just as though He were seen, and to be frugal in times of wealth and poverty, to speak the truth when you are happy or angry, and to be meek before Allah in every circumstance." So these are advices from Nabi Suleiman alayhi salam. It says, among his duties as king was to raise and maintain an army to defend his kingdom and wage war on other states uh, that they had problems with or that were to aggress against them. Then he needed to protect their kingdom. His army consisted not only of men, but of birds and beasts and jinn as well. He took charge of these duties personally and oversaw the selection and training of his soldiers and the horses upon which they rode. Once on the eve of battle, he was engaged in doing this inspection. The steeds that had been selected were being shown to him one after the other. The work was so much that he could not get a break for prayer. The sun set and darkness descended, and he confessed to Allah, I became so engrossed with these horses was distracted from the remembrance of my Lord that the sun has now disappeared beyond the horizon's veil. He begged the angels of Allah, bring it back for me. Within moments, the sun reappeared, and he and his companions prepared for the prayer by wiping their calves and necks for the ablution. So this prayer, it would not have been one of the wajibat, for example, because the Prophet he would not have missed this. Maybe it was mustahab prayer or something, and he regretted that he missed it, and he wanted the sun to bring it to go back. And then he asked the angels of Allah to bring it back for him. And then the angels did this. This has also happened for Imam Ali alayhi salam on several occasions. Once was in Medina, and another time was in Babel in Iraq. We see that Sheikh Mufid says, one day the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was at his own house, and Imam Ali alayhi salam was sitting with him. Jibreel came down and transferred the divine message. In that occasion, the Holy Prophet put his head on Ali's leg, and this situation continued until the sunset. Inevitably, Ali said his afternoon salat in that situation and did his salat in an unusual way, which was to do it with the gestures of the eyes. When the revelation came to an end, the Prophet returned to his normal status and turned to Ali and asked, didn't you say your afternoon salat? He said, Ya Rasulullah, because of your special situation that you are receiving the revelation, I could not say my salat standing. The Prophet said, pray and ask Allah to return the sun so that you can say your salat in its appropriate time. Because you are obeying Allah and His Prophet, Allah will answer your request. Imam Ali alayhi salam asked Allah to return the sun, and the sun returned so that he said his salah in the appropriate time, and when the sun set again. And then the sun set again after that. Asma says, I swear to Allah, I heard the sun made a noise like the noise of a saw cutting woods when it was setting. And this is from Sheikh al-Mufid's Kitab al-Arshad and a couple other books that we have references for this. So this is one of the times. Another time it has also happened in Babel. So this one is sufficient to mention here. He says about Sulayman, he says, once the Levant was struck by a severe drought, he and his subjects gathered in the desert outside of their city to pray for rain. They passed an ant who was also praying for rain, saying, Ya Allah, we are your creatures. We are dependent on you for our sustenance. Thus do not punish us for the sin of Adam's children and bring us rain. Suleiman overheard her prayer and was so moved that he told his people, let's just go home. Our work has been done by someone else. Meaning that he heard the dua of that ant and he knew that Allah would answer that dua. So there's no need to even make dua for the rain. When renovations to the temple were complete, Suleiman set off with a big army on the pilgrimage to Mecca. They marched until they came upon a valley that was inhabited by ants. A guard ant from the colony sensed the army's approach and cried out, "O ants, take cover in your mounds. Let Suleiman and his army not trample you while they are unaware." The wind carried this voice to the ears of Suleiman. He was at once grateful for Allah's gift to be able to understand this ant, and was also troubled because of her warnings. So he approached her and said, "Dear ant, do you not know that I'm Allah's prophet and that I will not do any harm or be unjust to anyone?" She said, "I know this, but I feared that my sisters might gaze upon your mighty army and be distracted from their duty to Allah." So he smiled at her reply and he prayed to Allah. He said, "Lord, inspire me to be grateful for the blessings that you have given me and my parents, and inspire me with the ability to do good deeds that you are pleased with, and include me through your mercy in the rank of the righteous servants." Then he maneuvered his troops around all of the ant pile to avoid those ants. So we see here Nabi Suleiman alayhi salam always thankful of Allah's bounties, always praying and being thankful to Allah. And we also see the care that he had even for these small creatures. A lot of time we are heedless of other things that are smaller than us, and we don't pay much attention to them, whether they are small animals or birds or ants or these type of things, and that we should be mindful of these. And we see that Nabi Suleiman diverted his whole army around to avoid crushing the houses of these ants. He said, as they approached Mecca, he told his troops, "This is a land in which Allah will raise an Arab prophet. He will be given victory over all his enemies. His enemies will be instilled with awe of him up to a distance of 1 month's travel in every direction. He will be just with his family and others alike. He will not be perturbed by naysayers. He will follow the path of Ibrahim. Glad tidings to all those who live to meet him, believe in him, and stand by him. Let those of you who are present tell those who are absent, for he will be the foremost of all the prophets, the seal of the messengers, and his name is recorded in all the scriptures of old." So we see that Suleiman alayhi salam is foretelling or prophesizing about Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. He said to prepare for the rites of Hajj, he told his troops to remove their body hair and to bathe and to put on clean clothes. Suleiman and his troops performed the rites of the Hajj according to the ancient custom of Ibrahim and Adam alayhim salam. He then had the entire Kaaba draped in some fine fabric that came from Egypt. So he became the first one to ever drape the Kaaba in a kiswa, or the cloth. So the pilgrimage of the Hajj is complete. Suleiman alayhi salam led his troops back to their land. En route, they needed to stop for water to drink and to wash for prayer. Suleiman called his troops to attention so he could assign the bird, Hudhud, the task of seeking out water. This bird, Hudhud, is, as it's called in Arabic, according to some traditions, this bird has the ability to sense water that is hidden beneath the earth, which is mentioned in Bahar al-Anwar. So this bird, it said he was looking for this bird. His army of birds hovered in perfect formation overhead as always. Suleiman gazed up into the sky to inspect the legions of birds, but to his surprise, a single ray of light shone through the otherwise impervious avian cloud above, revealing a gap where this bird was supposed to be. So they were all in the formation, but the spot where he was supposed to be was missing, was empty. So he asked, "Why don't I see this bird? Is he absent?" When he heard no response, he said, "I will punish him severely or even execute him if he does not bring me a good reason for his absence." Earlier that day, this bird, whose name was Ya'fur, had decided to explore and had happened into the land of Sheba. There he met another bird, the same type of bird, named Anqir. Anqir asked him, "From where have you come and where do you want to go?" Ya'fur replied, I have come from the Holy Land with my master, Sulayman, son of Dawood. The other bird, Ampere, he said, Who is Sulayman, son of Dawood? Ya'fur replied, He is the king of men, jinn, birds, animals, and jinn. Where are you from? That bird replied, I am from this land. It is ruled by a woman named Bilqis. It seems your master has a great kingdom. Bilqis's kingdom is not much less than that. She is the ruler of all Yemen. Will you come to see her kingdom? Ya'fur said, I am worried that Suleiman may look for me at the time of prayer when he will need the water. The bird said, I'm sure he'll be pleased if you bring him, some news, some information about this kingdom. You'll tell him about the kingdom of Bilqis. So back in the camp of Suleiman, his patience was growing thin. He was waiting for Hudhud, his bird, to come. He called out on the falcon, who was the commander of the birds, and asked if he knew where Ya'fur, the Hudhud, was. He said, I don't know. I did not send him on any mission. I don't know where he is. So the falcon summoned the eagle and ordered him to rise into the sky and seek out this bird. As he soared even higher, he spotted the bird flying in their direction. He swooped to intercept him, and Ya'fur exclaimed, For the sake of Allah Almighty, who gave you power over me, have mercy on me. The eagle stopped his attack, but scolded him, saying, The Prophet of Allah has sworn to punish you severely. Ya'fur asked, Did he mention any chance of, forgiveness or anything? The eagle said, If he does not bring me any good reason for his absence. So Ya'fur, this bird, he got hope. And when he approached Suleiman, he went in submission to him, taslim. Even so, Suleiman got a hold of him, and Ya'fur managed to say, Ya Nabi Allah, O Prophet of Allah, call to mind the day when you will stand before your Lord as I now stand before you. The anger from Suleiman's face vanished as he heard these words. He asked, Where have you been? Ya'fur said, I have become aware of information of which you are unaware. I have brought you certain news from the land of Bilqis. I have found there a woman who rules over them, and she has been given every sort of blessing. In particular, she has an immense throne. I found her and her people prostrating before the sun instead of Allah. Shaitan has made their deeds seem fair seeming to them, and thereby swayed them from the path, so they are not guided. Suleiman considered this news and said, We will see whether you have told the truth or whether you are a liar. So he dictated a letter for the queen of Sheba, to his scribe Asaf ibn Barkhia. He stamped it with his seal, and he told Ya'fur, Take this letter of mine and give it to them. Then come back, withdraw for them, come back and see what reply they give. So Ya'fur carried Suleiman's letter to Bilqis. He swooped into her court, and he didn't let them see them. He dropped the letter on her throne, and then he waited to see her reaction. He hid and waited. Upon reading the letter, Bilqis, she got worried. She turned to her advisors and said, O advisors, a gracious letter has been delivered to me. It is from King Suleiman. It begins in the name of Allah, the all beneficent, the ever merciful. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And continues, Do not be impertinent with me and come to me and surrender. After a pause, she looked up from the letter and said, O advisors, what is your opinion about this? I am not one to decide on this until I hear what you have to say. So her advisors discussed the matter amongst themselves for some time. Then her advisor told her, We might have might and resolve, but the decision is yours whether to fight or to surrender. So tell us whatever you want us to do, command us to do. So she thought about all the options, and she said, When kings invade cities, they ruin them and make its nobles into poor people. This is what they want to do. Let us neither fight them and risk our security, nor surrender and lose our civilization. Instead, I will send them some gifts to, hold them back, and I'll see what their response my messengers return with. So Ya'fur, he went to Sulayman before Bilqis' messengers arrived, and he reported everything to him. When Bilqis' messengers came to Sulayman, Sulayman asked him, "Do you dare pay monetary tribute to me to try to appease me for rejecting my demand for surrender? I have no need for your tribute or your gifts or your money. For what wisdom and guidance Allah has given me is better than what material wealth He has given to you. Nonetheless, you undoubtedly exult over these gifts of yours. Return to them with your gifts and tell them to prepare themselves for destruction, for we shall meet them with an army against which they will have no strength to fight. And with it we shall expel them from Sheba in utter disgrace." He was hopeful that his threat and his rejection of her gifts would convince the queen that he was not an ordinary king and compel her to come in submission. So a few weeks went by, and he was sure that the messengers would have returned to Sheba with his message. He said to his courtiers, "O advisors, who among you will bring me her throne before they come to me and surrender?" If she was not already convinced, he wanted to prepare a miracle that would leave no room for doubt. So one of the jinn said, "I can bring it to you before you rise from where you are seated. I have the strength to do so, and I am trustworthy in this charge." Suleiman asked if anyone else could do better. Asif ibn Barkhia, he spoke. He said to him, Suleiman had given him, knowledge of the book. If all the knowledge were divided into 73 parts, it says that Suleiman had taught one part of 73 to Asif ibn Barkhia. So Asif said, "I can bring it to you before a blink of an eye." He was destined to be Suleiman's successor. And while Suleiman could have performed this miracle himself, he wanted to let the people know and see the virtue of Asif ibn Barkhia and his power and his ability and his miracle that he could do. In this way, just as Dawood had shown Bani Israel Suleiman's virtue by letting him judge in that case that we discussed, in the blink of an eye, Asif ibn Barkhia, he folded the earth, stepped into Bilqis' court, transported her throne into Nabi Suleiman's court. So we see here that this was done by a successor of a prophet. So this is important to remember because we see that we hear that miracles are strictly for Anbiya or prophets, but we see here that Asif ibn Barkhia was able to do this miracle, and it is mentioned in Quran, and he was a successor of a prophet. So this also shows us that successors of prophets can also do these type of things. We have many, many stories in relation to this when it comes to Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. When Suleiman saw that this throne was displayed before him, he said, "This is by my Lord's grace. He has allowed this to be done to test me to see whether I am grateful or not. If one is grateful, his gratitude only benefits himself. And if one is ungrateful, he only harms himself. For Allah is free of need. Our gratitude and generous, and He is free of need for our gratitude and generous in spite of our ingratitude." So we see that if we are grateful, it is benefiting ourselves. But if we are ungrateful, it is not hurting anyone but our own self. So it is in our favor that we should always be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we should always look to thank Him and praise Him in all matters. And ingratitude doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't harm the one we are ungrateful to, and it only harms ourselves. When we see here that we said that Asif ibn Barkhia, it mentioned in Quran that he was given some of the knowledge of the book. And we said here that if the knowledge were divided into 73 parts and Suleiman taught him one part of these 73, and he was able to do this feat, this miraculous feat. We see that in Bihar al-Anwar, which is mentioned in the footnotes here, that the tradition goes on to say that 72 of the 73 parts of knowledge were given to Prophet Muhammad and his successors, the 12 Imams, alayhimus salam. So if he can do this with one part of the knowledge, we see that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam had 72 parts of the knowledge. So our mind cannot even imagine what they can do by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah favors who He wills. It says, soon news reached Sulayman that Bilqis was approaching with her entourage ready to submit. He commanded his advisors, disguise her throne before she arrives so we may see whether she is guided by her intellect or whether she is one who is not guided. Part of his goal was to convince her that he was Allah's prophet, but he also wanted to test her intellect and her discernment by making some minor alterations to her throne. He wished to test her ability to observe and draw sound conclusions from her observations. When Bilqis arrived, she was welcomed into Sulayman's court. As she walked by her throne, it was asked of her, "Is your throne like this one?" She said, "It seems to be." And then she observes the alterations and thus refrained from assuming that it was in fact her throne. She understood that this miracle was an attempt. It was an attempt to convince her that Sulayman was not an ordinary king. She said, "We were given knowledge of the truth of your message even before seeing this miracle, and we had submitted right at that moment." The fact that his letter demanded her submission to Allah and that he refused her tribute had convinced her that he was Allah's prophet. Because most people, they were just taking the money and the gifts and leave the other person alone, and they're only after materialistic things. But she saw that Sulayman did not care about these things at all and was after something different, that he wanted her to submit to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, and to come to the path of. It says it had been the idols she worshipped instead of Allah that had prevented her from accepting Sulayman's message at first, for she was of disbelieving people. So Sulayman invited her, saying, "Enter my palace." When she entered and saw its courtyard, she thought it was a pond. So she lifted her skirt slightly, exposing her calves. Sulayman told her, "It is a courtyard whose floor is made of polished crystal." Amazed by such architectural feat and genius and all the other miracles and things that she had witnessed, she said, "Lord, I had wronged myself by not believing before now. I hereby surrender alongside Sulayman to the Lord of all the worlds." So this is how Bilqis came to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Something else about Sulayman, it mentions here that once an old woman came to the court of Sulayman and she lodged a complaint against the wind. You imagine the king, he's in his court, and then someone comes and complains and makes a petition and signs and files a complaint against the wind. Well, this is what this lady did. And she was working on top of her roof when a gust of wind blew her with such force that she was thrown from her roof, and she broke her wrist as a result of that. So Sulayman summoned the angel who controlled the wind so that he could hear the woman's complaint against him. Sulayman asked the angel, "What made you do what you did to her?" The angel said, "Allah ordered me to save a ship that was stranded at sea. As is my wont, I rushed to fulfill my Lord's command. As I blew upon the ship, I also blew upon this woman, and as a result, she must have broken her wrist." Suleiman asked Allah, "How should I judge between your wind and this lady?" Allah told him, "You must recover the cost of restitution for this woman's broken wrist from the owner of the ship, which I saved with my wind. I am Allah, and no one is wronged in my kingdom." So this is one of the strange cases that even Suleiman was judging between people and the angels that controlled the wind. And Allah is telling him that since he saved this ship, her restitution lies with them because it was because of them that the wind came and knocked her down. Subhanallah. Suleiman once told his son, he said, "Beware of being argumentative, for there is no benefit in it. It only serves to foment enmity among brethren." This is so true. There's no benefit in arguing. A lot of us argue, especially in our younger years, and unfortunately, some people continue on until they go back and meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But most of the time, we realize that this arguing is not worth it, and we're not getting anywhere, and we're only getting stress and tightness of chest and almost cause ourselves a stroke or a heart attack and raise our blood pressure for no good reason at all. So most of the people we're arguing with, they don't even care about our proofs or anything, and they just want to argue for the sake of arguing, not for the sake of truth. So there's no benefit in arguing. Even we have narrations about giving up arguing, even if we are in the right. Uh, married people know about this. We have to give up arguing, even if we're in the right. So we see that Suleiman says, "Beware of being argumentative, for there is no benefit in it. It only serves to make enmity between the brothers." If we're arguing with each other all the time, as soon as we see that person, we say, "Oh man, not him again. He's always arguing. Anytime we bring something, he's always got something to say. He's always arguing." So it makes people don't like to be around argumentative person or always getting, stirring up trouble. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to avoid being argumentative. And the ending of this chapter talks about the death of Suleiman. Suleiman used to seclude himself, especially in his old age, in the temple. During his absence, Asif ibn Barkhia would handle his affairs. During his 712th year, while he was in his seclusion, Allah decided to take his life. He sent the angel of death to retrieve his soul as he stood in worship leaning upon his staff. His lifeless body remained rigidly supported for days, giving his servants the impression that he was still alive. Eventually, Allah sent a termite to weaken his staff so that his body would collapse. Only when it fell did his people realize that he had died and had been dead for some time. Allah arranged his death in such an unusual way to prevent the jinn from making false claims to having knowledge of the unseen. Clearly, if they had known the unseen, they would have not endured their degrading punishment a moment longer than they had to, because they were working and doing labor under the power or the mastership of Suleiman alayhi salam. And if you know that your master had died, you would not do all of that work and labor, and you would say, well, this job is over with, I don't have to do this anymore. But it's clear that they had no knowledge of the unseen, because they continued on in this way until this termite ate the staff. It says, generations later, it would be said about the inevitability of death: if anyone had been able to find a path to everlasting life or to ward off death, it would have been Suleiman, son of Dawood, who was given dominion over jinn and humanity, in addition to prophecy, in a station of proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nonetheless, when he consumed his allotted provisions and completed his appointed term, the crossbows of morality launched at him arrows laced with death. As a result, his palaces lay empty, unused, and inherited by another people. So it goes to show that he's saying that no matter if someone is as rich as Suleiman and has palaces and all the cars and all the nice things in the world, no matter what positions they have of power, even if they have the whole people working under them, they will also face death. The same way as we will face death, even if we are poor or we are rich, we will all meet and face Malakul Maut, the angel of death. So the best thing to do to prepare for this is to work on ourselves and to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we see that Nabi Sulayman told that person who saw all of his wealth and wanted that wealth, he said, it is better because this will perish. It is better that you do a good deed sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we can take that advice from Suleiman and make sure that we do our deeds sincerely for the sake of Allah, and this will be everlasting. No matter all these things that we have gathered and amassed in this life will eventually perish and go to someone else. All the money we have saved will go to someone else that will inherit. The houses we have, someone will inherit them. The cars we have, someone will inherit them. But the deeds that we do will continue on and last and be everlasting, inshallah. So with this, we finish the chapter of Suleiman, and next class we will talk about Nabi Yunus